And during Lent this year, the headlines are going to be, I'm going to read you a story. It's called Hope for the Flowers, written by Trina Paulus. And basically, I'm just going to combine the story, the headlines, and the sermon. Okay? So let's see if I can get both things out and make it work. My friends, whether you pray with me. Holy and loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Okay. Once upon a time, a tiny striped caterpillar burst from the egg which had been home for so long. "Hello, world," he said. "It sure is bright out here in the sun." "I'm hungry," he thought, and straightway began to eat the leaf he was born on. And he ate another leaf, and another, and another, and got bigger, and bigger, and bigger. Until one day he stopped eating and thought, there must be more to life than just eating and getting bigger. It's getting dull. So Stripe crawled down from the friendly tree, which had shaded and fed him. He was seeking more. And there were all sorts of new things to find. Grass and dirt and holes and tiny bugs. Each fascinated him. But nothing satisfied him. When he came across some other crawlers like himself, he was especially excited. But they were so busy eating, they had no time to talk, just as Stripe had been. They don't know anything more about life than I do, he sighed. Then one day, Stripe saw some crawlers really crawling. He looked around for their goal and saw a great column rising high in the air. The column was a pile of squirming, pushing caterpillars. A caterpillar pillar. This is serious. It appeared that the caterpillars were trying to reach the top. But the top was so lost in the clouds that Stripe had no idea what was there. He felt a new excitement, like the sap rising in the spring. Maybe I'll find what I'm looking for. Full of agitation, Stripe asked a fellow crawler, "Do you know what's happening?" "I just arrived myself," said the other. "Nobody has time to explain. They're so busy trying to get wherever they're going. Up there." "But what's at the top?" continued Stripe. "No one knows that either. But it must be awfully good because everybody's rushing there. I've no more time." And he plunged into the pile. Stripe's head was bursting with the new drive. He couldn't get his thoughts together. Every second, another crawler passed him and disappeared into the pillar. There's only one thing to do. And he pushed himself in. And we will continue that next week. Jesus went into the desert for 40 days. Hey, Dan, you can turn the lights back up. Thanks. For 40 days, when he was good and tired and hungry, the devil, the adversary, tempted him 3 times. With food, with power, and with control of the entire known world. And as we all know, Jesus resisted the temptation. He knew that he could turn the stones into food. He knew that he could rule the world, and he knew he could fly. But ruling the world and jumping off buildings were not what he was called to do. Jesus was not driven by power. He was not driven to acquire things. He was called to teach, to heal, to lead by example. And Jesus' example was one of love, of treating others the way he would like to be treated. In other words, the devil tempted Jesus, but Jesus did not cave in. Now, on the other hand, Stripe the caterpillar seems to have been driven by instinct alone. As a newly hatched caterpillar, he did what little bugs do. He ate. He ate leaves. He ate lots of leaves. And then he wanted more, so he came down from the tree. But even after checking out all the bugs and plants and holes, he wanted more. My friends, we call ourselves followers of Jesus, and yet we find that doing that very difficult. Because, just like Stripe, we want more. We want more. If we were hungry and had the power to turn stones into bread, who among us would not do it? If we had the power to rule the world and make it what we believe it should be, could we refuse the chance? Maybe those situations are just way too big for us because we can't get our heads around them. But we are tempted. We're tempted by other, less overwhelming misuses of power. We're tempted by the idea that we deserve more than we have. I just deserve it, And so when we're at the store and the clerk returns to us an extra dime, do we keep it? What about an extra $10? An extra $100? In our minds, the dime is no big deal. Maybe the $100 is. Still, both are acts of dishonesty. If we're hungry, can we justify stealing a loaf of bread? What if our children are hungry? If I can't afford that piece of software that I really need or really want, is it okay to copy it from someone else? The company can afford it. See, we need to define ourselves. We need to define ourselves by what is right and what is wrong. Because sometimes we see the big theft, the big crime, as less evil than a small one. We see the big theft, the big crime, as less evil than the small one. Because we tend to punish the poor person who robs a grocery store more rigorously than someone who cheats investors out of millions of dollars. You know that. We also self-justify our wrongs. I need it more than they do. And those people are different from me. And they might hurt us, so we need to hurt them first. I really want that thing. I really want it. So it's okay to take it. Self-justification does not make right. It doesn't even make them okay. We're called to follow the example of Jesus. And we know that none of us can ever live up to that example. But we're called to do the best we can. He did not give in to temptation, so neither should we. Now, our friend Stripe, the caterpillar, was tempted by the caterpillar pillar. He could have sat back and watched for a while. He could have found more grass to nibble and holes to explore. Instead, he followed the crowd and plunged in without really thinking. Now, Stripe was a really young caterpillar, so maybe his following the crowd is understandable. Next week we'll find out if that was a good decision. But during the season of Lent, we are called to give of ourselves as Jesus gave of himself. And, traditionally we give up a meal a week, or we give up meat, or give up something we value. As children, was give up candy. But we're no longer children. Most of us here are adults, or at least we think of ourselves as adults. And many of us found MCC as broken people. We needed a place to heal. And MCC is a place to do that. It's much like Jesus going into the desert. We isolate ourselves from those who have hurt us. And we find a connection to God. And then we become whole human beings. But the question is, what do we do next? It's easy to come to church and feel good about ourselves. It's easy to stay in this safe place. But we are called to do more. In this season of Lent, it's traditional to give up something of value. Maybe it's time for each of us to find a way to give something of value. Think about going through your closets and giving those lightly worn items to charity. Hear what I said, lightly worn items. Big holes don't count. What about buying a few extra canned goods when you go to the store? Somebody can use them. And Robert Summer, where's Rob? Back in the corner. Rob has contacts. Talk to him. Maybe you can sit down with somebody who's struggling with sexual or gender identification, with job or housing needs, with school subjects. If you can help, do it. Perhaps you know someone who needs a visit. A nursing home can be a very lonely place. Being stuck at home because of lack of mobility or physical problems can be devastating. A visit or a letter is wonderful. Maybe today you could drop off a Valentine card or a flower. 10-minute visit, Valentine card or a flower. Find a way during this season to give of yourself, because you are someone who has value. So give something of value. Move out of the desert. Meet the challenges. Be MCC. Amen? Amen.